Oh, I've got the sound. Now, how can I block that
You love that.
picture?
Where's your? I thought that was the.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship, fondly known as BUF. I'm Tom Nicholas, and I am the celebrant for today's service. We're so glad that you have chosen to attend today in person or via Zoom. Our summer services are coordinated by Reverend Barbara Wells Tenhove, and she will also be leading the service today. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence in the congregation of Paul Beckel, our regular minister, who's taking a break from his normal duties this summer. After today's service, as always, there will be a coffee hour downstairs. If you're new to BUF, you can grab one of the red coffee cups and find yourself pounced upon in a friendly way by experienced busters who can make you feel at home and answer questions you may have about BUF. If you're attending on Zoom, we encourage you to linger afterward and have your own virtual chat. Also, I want to acknowledge that today is the Pride Parade, and that many Buffsters are there right now, either actually participating in the parade or watching it.
Or on their way.
Hey! And so we really encourage you to go watch the parade after today's service. It's a wonderful.
Where does it start? 11:30 downtown Depot Market Square. 11 o'clock, sorry, 11 o'clock it starts.
Could everybody hear that? Yeah? Okay. So if you're not sure, you can ask Andrea after the service. Follow her. Yeah, I know that it ends down in the public market square area. It starts in the Waypoint Park area and then goes through Cornwall Street at one point and ends up in the public market. Let me see. I also wanted to say that there are some announcements in your order of service. You can look through them yourself, but I did want to point out that Barbara's Garden Party is a big social event in the Buff world, and if you haven't signed up for it, there are still seats or places available. There's going to be some really top shelf musical entertainment there. And it's Saturday, July 13th. You can go on Buff's auction site and sign up for that if you like. And also, I just want to say that I want to tell the families here that there will be an excellent children's program today, and young people over the age of 2 are welcome to join our trained teen child care providers upstairs after we sing them away later in the service. There's also a nursery in the back of the sanctuary where little ones can play while parents listen to the service. If your children will be happier to play somewhere they don't have to be quiet, you might choose to utilize that. And now, please settle in and prepare to be rocked by the infinite as you listen to Andrea Rackel play Toccata in C minor by A.C. de Seixas.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Tom, and good morning, everyone. I am indeed the Reverend Dr. Barbara Wells Tenhove, an affiliated minister here at Buff, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to the first of 9 summer services, which I'm privileged to coordinate once again this summer. There are wonderful topics and creative explorations coming your way over the next 2 months, and I hope that you'll make a point of attending and bringing your friends. It's good to be together even in the summer. Now, today's service is an exploration of a few remarkable poems by the late 20th century American poet Stanley Kunitz, heightened with improvisational music by our own amazing keyboard artist, Andrea Rackel. And I'm so glad you're here to be a part of it. It's really something to work with Andrea on this. Now, poetry is language at its most focused. Poems can tell stories in just a few short lines. They can open our hearts with one perfectly chosen phrase, or make us laugh or cry by the way the words come together in just that way. And of course, poetry has a deep and abiding connection to religion. One can argue that most, if not all, of the great religious texts that we honor are poetry, or at least poetic in nature. And of course, hymnody, that's such a great word, hymnody. Hymnody is a form of poetry, as the composers of songs we sing in church utilize the poetic form. Short, pithy words put to rhythm and music. And so we're going to sing one of those short, pithy poems. This was written by Phil Porter, who is the developer of Interplay. And the words to this are gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to invite you to rise and body your spirit, and then we're going to sing it through once, and then we're going to break it into a round. So just follow me. So here we go. Let's rise and body your spirit.
Poetry has been a big part of my life since I was in high school, so I'm thrilled that Barbara chose to build today's service around a set of poems by Stanley Kunitz. And I thought I would use these few moments here near the beginning of the service to say a few words about poetry. In such a short space, it's hard to know exactly what to say. But one important point is that in a poem, the sound and rhythm of the words help express the meaning. I think that's why, in my own experience, I have found that I can be moved by a poem before I can able to articulate exactly why I am moved or what the poem means. I'm left with a sense of stillness, and that stillness itself feels like part of the meaning. Maybe you will feel something like that today as you listen to the poems by Stanley Kunitz that Barbara has chosen. Here is a part of a poem I once wrote about poetry. It's never what you think to mention, never your first intention. It's not what you think before you enter the cave. It's a moment unwinding. It's what you find yourself finding. It's forgetting how you were going to behave. It's about tasting what your tongue has never learned a name for. It's about touching what your hand hasn't told you it knows how to find. And now I invite Barbara to light our chalice, symbol of our faith. And as she does so, please join me in saying our covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant. This is the part of the service where we sing the children away. And even though I don't see any children sitting there, let's go ahead and sing this song. We'll imagine our children who we love so much, and we will sing to them the song we always sing at this point in the service. I'd now like to have the ushers come forward for the offering. Buff could not exist without your generous financial support. Please give what you can. If you're attending on Zoom, you can donate online. Just click on the word give. It's in the upper right-hand corner of the homepage of the Buff website. Thank you for your support.
So thank you so much for your generosity and for your care for this beloved congregation. We create a circle of care here when we gather, even though we're in rows. We think about all the ways that we bring people into this circle. And one way we can do that is through a type of prayer that invites us to reflect a little bit on what we're feeling in our hearts, the blessings, the challenges, the hopes. And so I invite you first to just take a few deep breaths. Breathing is always good. We don't do enough of it. Gracious One, whom we call by many names, on this beautiful summer day, when we are here out and proud, we give thanks, great and glorious thanks, for the acceptance and love that our faith invites us to live out with our feet, with our hands, with our gifts, with our love. We recognize that the world is not a place of safety for many, but on this day, let us hold everyone in great and loving care. I recognize that amongst us are people who are full of joy, who are feeling the blessings of this day, who are remembering something special that has happened, celebrating. If you are among the many here who have something you wish to celebrate and honor, I invite you to bring that thought first into your heart, and then into your mind, and so you can let it be free and be held in the embrace of this community. If you have a blessing that you wish to honor, I invite you to just say the simple word, yes. 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 Grateful for all of the gifts that we have been given, the blessings that are here among us, that wonderful yes that invites us to live boldly. We are so grateful. And I know that there are those amongst us who are holding in our hearts someone who is struggling, who know that this is a rough time. Perhaps there is a big loss in your life, someone that you love who is struggling. If that reflects something for you, I invite you first to call into your heart the name or a word that represents that person or that experience to your heart. And then bring it into your mind. And then if you choose to bring those names or experiences gently and quietly spoken into this embrace of this circle of care. I invite you to speak those names now. May all of these names that we have spoken be held in the loving embrace of this community and in the loving embrace of the great spirit of life that is always present among us. Recognizing that our love makes a difference in the world. Recognizing that the many ways we give and the many ways we share and the many ways we hold each other in loss and grief matter deeply. We offer this prayer of thanksgiving, this prayer of love, and this prayer of hope, always and forever. Amen, and blessed be. My late mother, Rawlene Wells, was a poet and spent her professional life as an English teacher. So you won't be surprised to learn that I grew up with poetry. In junior high school, I got involved on the forensics team, which is not only the study of crime scenes, but for reasons too complicated to explain here, is also the name of speech competitions. Now, for those competitions, I learned to read poetry out loud, which is really how it's supposed to be read. For poetry is written not only to tell stories and capture imagery, but to get into our hearts and our heads and our bodies with its rhythm and its sound as well. Over the course of my long ministry, I have occasionally picked thematic poems on a particular poet. I've got to get this in the right spot here. There we go. Over the course of my long ministry, we love microphones. Oh, we love Andrea. So, once again, I had a long ministry. Almost 40 years now, but can I work the microphones? Not always. I've occasionally picked thematic poems or a particular poet to explore in a worship service, because there is spiritual power in poetry, even poems that are not ostensibly religious. And when we read poems out loud to music, they have a way of touching us that can be pretty powerful. And I'm grateful to Andrea, who was willing to walk down this path with me, sharing her musical gifts. Now, my mother, the English teacher, was responsible for the choice of today's poet. Though she was unaware of him when she was teaching, she discovered former US poet laureate Stanley Kunitz as she aged, and she loved for me to read his poems to her in the last years of her life. Though it is not my intent to spend a lot of time speaking about the poet, I'd rather read and talk about the poems. It's important to know just a little bit about Stanley Kunitz in order to make sense of his poetry. Kunitz was born in 1905 in Massachusetts to Jewish parents of Russian-Lithuanian descent. Anti-Semitism was a part of his life, at least up to and into the Second World War, where, interestingly, he served in Washington State as a conscientious objector. He left home very young and managed to graduate from Harvard, even though his professors discouraged him because he was Jewish. So he became a reporter and began writing poetry. His early poems are, in my opinion, and others, rather abstract and hard to access. But as time and life impacted him, along with his love of the natural world, he was a famous gardener. His poems began to reflect the stories of his family and the blessings and challenges of living in our complex world. As a teacher, he impacted many poets, and he was ultimately successful in a professorial career. And in his later years, he lived to be 100. He became well known for his poetry, and first in 1974, and then again in 2000, became the Poet Laureate of the United States. Now, like many poets, he wrote about what he knew. This first poem reflects the creative experience that Kunitz, as a poet, experienced every time he tried to get himself to write. And any of us who ever write know there is a process to get yourself to write. Now listen to the beautiful as well as the not so beautiful metaphors from his beloved garden that he offers us on his way to writing this poem. It's called The Round. Light splashed this morning on the shell-pink anemones swaying on their tall stems. Down blue-spiked veronica, light flowed in rivulets over the humps of the hummingbees. This morning, I saw light kiss the silk of the roses in their second flowering, my late bloomers flushed with their brandy. A curious gladness shook me. So I have shut the doors to my house. So I have trudged downstairs to my cell. So I am sitting in semi-dark, hunched over my desk, with nothing for a view to tempt me but a bloated compost heap. Steamy old stink pile under my window. And I pick my notebook up and I start to read aloud the still wet words I scribbled on the blotted page. Light splashed. I can scarcely wait till tomorrow when a new life begins for me. As it does each day. As it does each day. Oh, I love the metaphors, the wonderful metaphors of the compost heap and the gorgeous flowers mixing together to bring about the beauty of the poem. I also find such grace in his trust that each day will bring new life. We know that life comes forth from the darkness of the compost heap. And from that smelly old stink pile can emerge the gorgeous flowers that celebrate the new day, that help create the new poem. Well, like many writers, Kunitz was blessed with an ability to take the difficult experiences of life and turn them into poetry that can break open your heart. His family life was particularly difficult as his father died in a spectacularly awful way. And this poem tells that story. It's called The Portrait. My mother never forgave my father for killing himself, especially at such an awkward time. And in a public park that spring when I was waiting to be born. She locked his name in her deepest cabinet and would not let him out. though I could hear him thumping. When I came down from the attic with the pastel portrait in my hand of a long-lipped stranger with a brave mustache and deep brown level eyes, she ripped it into shreds without a single word and slapped me hard. In my 64th year, I can feel my cheek still burning. This poem reminds us how the experiences of childhood continue to haunt us well into later life. Kunitz's father did indeed kill himself, and the pain of that loss would stay with him all his life. It was the not knowing and the trying to know that he thought about and wrote about. Now, I love the image of the portrait being locked in the cabinet, but even still, the young boy hears it thumping, thumping, thumping. I know I have family secrets and pain that I carry in my heart that still thump, thump, thump today. Do you? The next poem is a gentler, even funny take on a child's perspective. But as Tom reads it, take note of Kunitz's use of the word father in the last stanza. Does he mean his own father or God? Listen to Tom read Halley's Comet, which you will want to remember was seen in 1910 when Stanley Kunitz was a boy of 5 years old.
Miss Murphy in first grade wrote its name in chalk across the board and told us it was roaring down the Milky Way at frightful speed, and if it wandered off its course and smashed into the earth, there'd be no school tomorrow. A red-bearded preacher from the hills with a wild look in his eyes stood in the public square at the playground's edge, proclaiming he was sent by God to save every one of us, even the little children. "Repent, ye sinners," he shouted, waving his hand-lettered sign. At supper, I felt sad to think that it was probably the last meal I'd share with my mother and my sisters. But I felt excited too and scarcely touched my plate. So Mother scolded me and sent me early to my room. The whole family's asleep, except for me. They never heard me steal into the stairwell hall and climb the ladder to the fresh night air. Look for me, Father, on the roof of the red brick building at the foot of Green Street. That's where we live, you know, on the top floor. I'm the boy in the white flannel gown, sprawled on this coarse gravel bed, searching the starry sky, waiting for the world to end.
Oh, I just love that poem. I love that poem. The interlocking stories bring the child to the roof where he waits, maybe even hopes, for the world to end, a world without a father. Seen through a child's eyes, the father he waits for may take him to some kind of heaven, for though you could not tell when Tom read the poem, Kunitz capitalizes that father. But it could also just be his earthly father returning for him to finally know. It's surpassingly beautiful, even though I find it terribly sad. Kunitz did not have the happiest of childhoods, and his younger years were also very stressful as he had 2 divorces and many difficult challenges. But later in his life, he married the poet Elise Asher, and her impact on him was tremendous. Through her, he befriended many of the influential artists and writers of the day, including the poet Louise Gluck and the artist Mark Rothko. Kunitz got very involved in his community of Provincetown, Massachusetts, and over the course of his long life, remember, 100 years, he made many friends and had an enormous influence on the poetic life of the United States, serving for many years in an official capacity with the US government, encouraging people to read and to write poetry. As he aged, his poems began to look back on his life and reflect on the joy and sorrow that comes with the loving and ultimately losing the people we love. Now, this next poem is one my mother particularly loved, as it had an enormous influence on her, as with age, she dealt with the loss of so many of her special people. It's called The Layers. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was, though some principle of being abides from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon and the slow fires trailing from the abandoned campsites over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact, to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through the wreckage, a nimbus clouded voice directed me. Live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. What a wonderful way the poet explores the losses and the growth that come with old age. Yes, the poet writes, "How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses?" Now, anyone of a certain age will tell you how great that feast is. But the poet also recognizes that there is a next chapter, even in the oldest of lives. Transformation will occur, for he, like all of us, is not done with his changes. And so he must live in the layers of life and find in them the strength to go on, even in the face of great loss, even in the face of death. And it is the coming of death that our final poem addresses. Now, this poem uses the imagery of a boat detaching itself from shore as a metaphor for the coming of death. Now, this is an image made famous in Tennyson's poem, Crossing the Bar, but Kunitz makes it his own. It's called The Longboat. When his boat snapped loose from its mooring, under the squeaking of the gulls, he tried at first to wave to his dear ones on shore, but in the rolling fog, they had already lost their faces. Too tired even to choose between jumping and calling, somehow he felt absolved and free of his burdens, those mottos stamped on his name tag: conscience, ambition, and all that caring. He was content to lie down with the family ghosts in the slop of his cradle, buffeted by the storm, endlessly drifting. Peace, peace. To be rocked by the infinite. As if it didn't matter which way was home. As if he didn't know. He loved the earth so much. He wanted to stay forever. Of course, we love this earth. Even though there is peace to be had when we are rocked by the infinite, we are tied to life through our love for our friends and family and our powerful affection for the planet that gave us birth. Stanley Kunitz understood how deeply we humans love, and his poetry reflects this. His gorgeous imagery, his powerful metaphors, and his abiding humanity make for poems that touch our hearts. I'm grateful to him for creating beauty in a world always in need of it. And grateful to Andrea for making music of such astounding loveliness. And let us now create music and words together by singing a beautiful poem put to music by the great poet Rabindranath Tagore. It's hymn number 191, Now I Recall My Childhood. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing together. Now I recall my childhood when the sun burst to my bedside with the day's surprise. Faith in the marvelous bloomed anew each dawn. Flowers bursting fresh within my heart each day. Then looking all the world with simple joy, on insects, birds, and beasts, and fallen weeds, fullness and melted fullest wealth of all. My mother's voice gave me to the stars. Now when I turn to think of lonely time, I hear the sound of voices of the night, and rise of mountains on the morning light. In life reborn, in fresh surprise of love. Please remain standing for the closing words. As we leave here today, let us remember to look for life's star songs in music, art, and poetry. Let us try to live in the layers and trust that when our world ends, we will be rocked by the infinite. Knowing that we will never be done with our changes, may we trust in the beauty of this world, even as we reconcile ourselves to the feast of losses that love always brings. And as Tom extinguishes our flaming chalice, the symbol of our faith, may we carry its light in our hearts and in our souls until we are together again. And we have a special way of closing here at Buff. We invite you to take hands in a circle, maybe two, if it looks like that's easier. Those of you here know what to do. Those of you new to us, follow along as we sing hymn number 155, Circle Round for Freedom.